Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster, and joining me this week, I have a brand new guest, but very familiar face. Welcome, Micah. This is your first time on the channel, and we finally made it work.
Finally, yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Micah. I'm a friend of John from the Here We Dragon Slack and around like Twitter and whatnot. You see me appear in the comments of multiple of John's videos. But yeah, we've been trying to do Dragonheart for a long time, and now we can finally do it.
Yeah, and then it'll be another length of time before we can make why am I drawing a blank now? I always draw Prince of Egypt. Yeah, because I have to watch it first, and then we can start planning on talking about it. But we'll save that for later on. But no, yeah, we've been talking about Dragonheart for a while, and which I'm very happy that we've made it work, because this is a favorite of mine going back to I think I was just saying I was about 12 years old when it came out, and this is a fantasy movie from a time before the Lord of the Rings trilogy, at least the movies. And so going back to watch it felt like it was belonging to another age. And I've had to reconcile with the fact that the film is a bit older now, and I guess I'm not a little kid anymore. But I'm interested. When did you first see the movie, and how were you introduced to it?
Oh, probably when I was about 10, that early. I think probably around 10, maybe 2007 or 8 would be when I first watched it. I remember because I was young enough for my parents, who back when we were deeply more religious than we are now, they were like, oh, close your eyes at the beginning scene when Ian gets stabbed. I couldn't see the blood. That would be too terrible,
Which is funny, because I remember when I first saw this movie feeling like watching the beginning and feeling really sad when Einan, gets stabbed. And then you go back on rewatch, like, no, he's got it coming.
It's like, damn, Bowen showed up.
Yeah. But, yeah, no, so what... so what was your response to? I'm curious, like, how did you land on this movie? Because 2007, that's a good many years after it came out. So I'm curious.
I mean, I really liked it, of course, because it had cool sword fighting. There wasn't much else for little me to ask for, except that I constantly remembered the face of David Thewlis in every single film thereafter, because he does such a great job at portraying those types of characters.
I hated him for so long. It was a long road to Professor Lupin for me, because I so love him as that character, but he's so despicable as Einan, and I could not help but see him as this character for years and years afterward. But he's such a great actor, so
he is, yeah.
So it's the fact that he played someone so deplorable, but that if he didn't do it so well, I wouldn't have hated the character so much.
Right, yeah. It also makes a difference when you watch it when you're really young.
Yeah.
You just attribute it. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you're younger, I think you're less concerned with actors and more concerned with characters. They kind of blend into one and the same. But going back to to the beginning of the film, I'd be remiss if I didn't live up to my reputation and say that this film starts off and continues with extraordinarily wonderful music by the composer Randy Edelman. And this is still one of my favorite film scores of all time. And what's so hilarious about it is I'm always going on and on about traditional, orchestral film scores. And if I'm not mistaken, this score is actually all performed. Well, it's done on synthesizers that is made to sound like an orchestra, but it's not. So my argument kind of falls apart, and in that this is
it's your one exception.
Yeah, well, I think Randy Edelman did a lot of that type of thing just because, I imagine it was cheaper than hiring a full orchestra, and he did manage to create a sound that when you heard one of his scores back in the 90s, you kind of knew he was the composer. And so he really made it work so that it still sounded like sort of classic sounding score, and it's beautiful music. That main theme, when it starts to kick up, and the way those opening notes kind of blend in with the fire as the logo comes up, and
it does really great too, because the way the music is done in the opening is a lot more like uplifting, which works a lot for when the opening scene that establishes Einan and Bowen's relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that's why when the movie starts off, and at least the first time you're watching it, you view Einan in a positive light, because you see the love that Bowen has for him, and the sort of makes you feel like this is a, almost a father-son relationship that they have, even though he's the mentor. But you see, him smiling and how much he loves Einan as they're training. Yeah,
you're kind of seeing it from Bowen's perspective because of how he views Einan as well, as this pure prince who could do no wrong, follows the cult because he says so, and totally means it.
Yeah. Even though it's so funny, because when you go back and rewatch it, you can see all the moments when even young Einan is being pardon me, but he's being a dick.
Oh yeah.
But you're influenced though just by the way that Bowen sees him, and by the music. The music just feels so like this is a happy movie, and and this is uplifting, and and we should be smiling at this moment. And so Randy Edelman's music is just brilliant, and the theme that we hear early on comes back at the end of the film, which we'll talk about, which of course I'll just say that I probably haven't actually sat down and watched the movie in years, but it still made me misty-eyed today. It's just beautiful. But yeah, I guess I do want to start off talking about Dennis Quaid in this film, because it's so funny, because I came to know him as Bowen, from seeing this movie, and so it always has felt kind of out of place when I see him acting in most stuff, which tends to be sort of modern day, drama type stuff, which is funny because he's done more of that than this, but it's because I grew up with this movie. I'm always like, where's his beard and his sword and everything? But I think Bowen was kind of one of the first sort of archetypal knight characters that I grew up with, and so I've always kind of held a special place in my heart, even though we were talking about before we went on that I may not have noticed when I was younger, but he does have quite a number of character flaws that come through throughout.
He goes through the whole thing. He has a fall and then he has a rise.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have, we don't necessarily have to go through this chronologically, but we are talking about the beginning. So there's this whole, basically, it feels like a prologue sequence almost, where we see them go off to see the battle between Einan's father and the villagers, which I did kind of smile because this is definitely pre Lord of the Rings, fantasy battles where it's very small scale compared to what
Right.
we've gotten used to in the years. But
Although, oh, sorry, you can continue. I just had a point.
oh no, go
But
ahead.
it actually makes sense that it's much more small scale, because I was thinking about it when I was watching it earlier today. I was like, what's the actual size of this kingdom? And it's actually like tiny. I'm pretty sure the
Yeah,
kingdom is actually very small. It's got a castle, a village. It's most likely got a bunch of farms, and we see that the village is commanded by Lord Brock, who's like the brute lord sidekick. And then I guess he gets one more fief later because Jason Isaacs shows up later as Lord Felton. So he gets an upgrade in 12 years. But I think it actually makes sense that things are much more small scale with the one castle that happens to be next to a dragon.
yeah, and in a way, actually, it's kind of refreshing because we've gotten used to big CGI, armies and stuff like that. It's kind of nice to go back
Yeah.
to something that brings it back down to scale. But I did want to go ahead and mention, Brock is played by Brian Thompson, who was in a lot of, I'll say this kindly, in a lot of B-level, movie stuff back in the day. I think he was also in the pilot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well,
Ah.
and then some other stuff. Um, but I just smile seeing the cast of this movie because you just mentioned Jason Isaacs, from back before we really knew,
Yeah.
before,
He just comes
Jason,
in twirling that mustache like he does.
yeah, he really is like a mustache twirling villain, exactly. Um, and and then it was also really great seeing. We haven't seen her yet at this point, but Julie Christie is also in this, and she plays the Queen Aisling, Einan's mother, and it's just great to see. Like her role definitely has a lot more to it than I remember when I was
Oh
a
yeah.
kid, and
I love Queen Aisling. She's
yeah,
great.
she's one of the stronger characters, like in terms of just it's just the stuff in the beginning, just before she takes Einan to see Draco, and then when they're actually there, trying to save his life, and then later on in the movie with her, things that she tries to do to kind of go against Einan. There's definitely some good stuff in that part. And then yeah, so basically Einan is injured in this battle, and it's done by a kind of freak accident because
Yeah.
the young version of Kara, um, who will later in the film be played by Dina Meyer, she just like falls off.
Yeah, she just
You
bumps
know,
into him and then he
yeah.
just face plants a wall that happens to have some spikes in it.
I was watching it this time. I was like, that's like fate intervening. That should have just been left
Yeah.
alone. Like he's,
Yeah.
he should have died right there. And then, oh, cut to credits. Movie's over.
Yeah. I can
But
imagine if Bowen had just been a few seconds late.
yeah,
Like Bowen would have been sad, but we wouldn't have been sad.
but again, like this is the trick that the movie kind of plays on you in the beginning here, where you feel bad for Einan, and so that leads into the whole next sequence where when he gets taken to see Draco, and you're like, no, this is good. He's saving the kid's life, and then later on, you're like, no, this was bad.
No, this is a bad idea. Which I love how you don't get everything about Aislin's relationship to the dragons and whatever's beyond that. It's sort of implied that I think that Aislinn is the one in the kingdom who knows about it, of course. And I think that that's. I'm not sure if she was raised in like a cult or a priesthood or something that knew about how to talk with these dragons at all, but I find it interesting. I kind of like that it's left unexplained.
Yeah, I've always really liked that kind of storytelling where, because it's not crucial to the plot, it's just sort of this, you're given a taste of it where, they go to see Draco and she's like, um, great one, as he's singing, your song is sad. And he says, Aislinn, daughter of the Celts. And she says, whose people, you know, loved your kind and called you friend. And that's all you're given,
Yeah,
but from that you can read that there's a history between her people and the dragons. But that's all there is. And your mind is left to,
yeah.
imagine.
The off tangent here, I've seen like a couple of the prequels that they've done, and I think that they try to explain the backstory of that, where the dragons were involved with the Celts somewhat. They made it weird though. But
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I remember seeing like the, if you could call it a trailer for the first of those direct to video, uh, you know, prequels or sequels or whatever they were.
There's a sequel that came out 7 years after this one, and then there were the prequels that came out starting in like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah, I just remember seeing that. I'm like, nope, that can only do bad things for my love of this movie.
Yeah, don't watch the sequel unless you want to like have fun laughing at something.
Yeah, I think the giveaway was when I saw like, they showed scenes of like dragons and the visual effects looked more dated than in this movie.
The 2004 CGI dragons looked worse than Sean Connery's dragon.
Yeah, and to be fair, we should say like the visual effects of this movie certainly are dated.
Definitely.
It was that early, period of CGI, mid to late 90s. But I think the great thing about this movie though is it's so good and it has so much heart that it doesn't really matter. It's when you're immersed in the story, you're like, okay, yeah, this was made a while back. CGI was still in its infancy, but it's still, it's still very enjoyable.
Yeah, so, I could look past that easily.
Yeah, and Sean Connery's voice does do a lot to get you over it, because I mean, that is one of the funny things. I was thinking like, really, Bowen, I know it's been 12 years, but you can't forget Sean Connery's voice.
You couldn't remember the voice, Bowen? I wrote in my notes, I was like, as I was watching the introduction to the dragon scene, I was like, Queen Aislinn is cool because she knows a dragon. Sean Connery is cool because he is a dragon.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I know they did it because of the limitations of the technology and how much money they wanted to spend. But I do love how that scene where they go to Draco to help Einan, you just hear his voice and you see some shadows.
It actually just added to it. I actually prefer that than them having him show up.
Yeah.
Because it also kind of made it to where like you recognize him in the voice 12 years later, but you'd also just don't know what he looks like.
Yeah.
Which works for the film, I think.
Yeah. And again, like, I'm going to mention like over and over about how much the music adds to, the scenes, but this is another one of those scenes where, once he starts to perform the magic and, and it lifts up, the scales to, to show his heart and not, we don't see a actual heart, but the
Right, yeah.
the beating light. The store comes back in, and it's just something about it just adds to the awe of the moment, and again, you feel like something good is happening.
Yeah.
So it
And then
tricks the audience.
and then right after that, you get their march out, and then Einen's like, "My fortress is going to be so cool." And then I saw the guard that was like standing between him and Brock, and the guard just looked so done with carrying the prince around. There's all these little things that I noticed, like I like the shadow of the sword that goes over Einen as Draco grabs it, and then like that guard is just a cool little minor character moment for me.
Yeah, I will say, like, I did kind of get amused at watching some of the the background guys, like especially during like battle scenes, who might not be putting the full effort into swinging their sword.
Right.
Which it kind of reminds me of. I know we shouldn't go there and mention the show, but but with Game of Thrones in its like first season, with the the men of the Night's Watch, the trainees, if you looked in the background.
Yeah.
It's like, no, don't look back there. Keep focused on the main characters.
Focus on the sad boy.
But yeah, so but I don't know, for me that just adds to the charm of of these types of productions. But yeah, no, so Einen, shows himself to be,
the worst.
Terrible. But of course, Bowen thinks that, the dragon has actually done this to him, and it really is very compelling, and sad to watch him, convinced of this, and the love that he shows towards Einen, he says, nobody is above the code, especially the king, and he hugs him, and you can just see the disdain on Einen's face. It's like, this is a one-sided,
Yeah, Bowen's whole deal in the movie is how he was. It seems like he's just the last member of this old ideal that is long rusted away, pun intended, and it just blinded him to the faults of this prince of this tiny little kingdom, whose power has gone so far over his head, where Bowen just can't look past that. So the veil has to be forcefully taken from him.
Yeah. And then of course, I said I didn't want to go in chronological order, but I keep thinking about things that like I really want to talk about, because what happens next is after this, moment of where he runs off, and it's ironic. I was thinking about this as I was watching, when he becomes convinced that Draco, even though he doesn't know Draco, that's not Draco's name yet, but he knows that the dragon has, or he thinks he knows that the dragon has changed Einen. And his impulse is to run off and get revenge. I did wonder watching this if, do you think that if he stuck around, he could have made any change whatsoever to Einen instead of rushing off?
I don't think he would have been able to make change towards Einen. He probably would have ended up exiled or executed, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I did think about that. Just
sorry for the bleakness.
Yeah, I know. It's
with the movie about knighthood, Song of Ice and Fire is going to be popping up in my head.
Yeah, but anyway, so what I meant when I said I'm thinking about stuff that I just want to talk about as they happen is because the next scene we get, it cuts to 12 years later, and we get to meet another wonderful, wonderful character, Brother Gilbert.
Brother Gilbert. I cannot believe they put me in the movie. That was so nice of them.
which I meant to look up how to pronounce the actor's name before we started.
It's like
I
Postlethwaite,
neglected.
isn't it?
Yeah, we're gonna go with that. Um,
Postlethwaite.
he's an actor who very sadly passed away a number of years ago. I think it was it was shortly after, yeah, he had a part in Inception, and I think it was shortly after that he passed away. But I've always loved him, and especially in this part because he just adds such wonderful goofiness and
He
lighthearted
does.
to
I
it.
I wrote down a lot of like his lines just because he has such great lines. I love him so much. Because the wandering bard who decides to just write stories about literally what he's seeing is so me. He's just like he's talking with Bowen, and he's like, everyone's a critic, and Bowen's like, you have the poet's gift of exaggeration, and he's like, you should read my histories. I'm just like, what does that mean, dude?
Yeah, and what's something else? It's when Bowen's saying, well, then you must have lived the sheltered life of a, and then he looks at him, he's like, of a monk.
Yeah, I know. I
Like,
wrote
well,
that
yeah.
one down too. He's just like, oh.
Which, and by the way, that whole sequence is hilarious. Like, even before they start talking, because it's, well, and also, music again, when the dragon flies overhead and Bowen comes riding after it, that music that plays as he's riding, it's like, creates this adventurous spirit. Uh, it's like, oh yeah, he's a knight and he's, hunting down dragons, even though I don't know if we're happy about that, but but he's doing the thing that knights do.
Right.
And but it's after then we see him battling with the dragon off in the distance. We don't see a dragon. It's all
Right.
done.
And that one I'm pretty sure was budget.
Yeah. But it's great because we hear all the sounds in the background, and he's like, oh, but I love when he,
in the air.
yeah, I love when he comes out and he's like, come back here, horse, coward.
His horse is like the most underrated character in the whole movie. We'll get to that though. We'll get to why. But yeah, no, it's great because it's another instance of we just get Bowen abandoning basically everything. And then we are introduced to Gilbert, who 100% believes in like all the knighthood stuff, all that chivalry and whatnot, quote unquote chivalry. But and then the veil gets taken away, and it's like, no, Bowen's changed now, and in general, knights are just kind of not what Bowen is made out to be, and what Bowen has made the Old Order to be. And which I appreciated that. I thought that was going to be in a lot less of this movie, but I was wrong.
So yeah, no, we've certainly. It's funny. We've certainly gotten a big taste of, what knights usually are by our experience of reading A Song of Ice and Fire. Which definitely allowed me to bring something else to watching the movie now versus when I was a kid, where you do have this idea of, well, a knight is this virtuous person who fights for good,
defender of glory and upholder of honor and all these good things, rescues the maiden, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and so in truth, he has kind of become, he's become the jaded knight who falls much more within the realm of stories that we've gotten used to. And and as he says, honor won't feed my belly nor shoe my horse.
He's become Barristan Selmy.
Which, speaking of which, and this is when we get to see Jason Isaacs, and and the man, the man the man is great, even like back here where this was just a bit part and he wasn't really, famous yet. And
Yeah,
that
he didn't have a character that had like all sorts of dimensions. He was like, I'm just coming in here for like quick buck, but it's like, he clearly enjoys these types of roles where he just gets to show up and he just gets to be a weasel.
Which, side note, I'm just going to say, it's funny that, he's in this after I've just been kind of having to deal with my displeasure that he was not brought back to play the Grand Inquisitor in the new Obi-Wan Kenobi show.
Yeah.
Because that is a role that he played in Star Wars Rebels. And
I didn't know he voiced in that.
Yeah.
Dang,
and
that is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it's really missed. So yeah, just that's a bit off topic, but I will just say, if you have the opportunity to bring in Jason Isaacs, bring in Jason Isaacs.
No, actually, that's not going to be the only Star Wars off-topic mention. I got one coming up.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I love it. Him being like the new guy that shows up within the 12 years just implies that he like owned a bit of land, and then he's like, "Oh, I got this opportunity to be this high lord in this kingdom," which is like, probably a few thousand square miles or something like that, just a couple thousand square miles. So, good job, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, it's in a way like what we were talking about earlier, the fact that everything is smaller scale with this, and it's not that big of a kingdom, just in a way kind of makes it all more humorous that these people are all so terrible. Because it's like they've got their little, their little corner that they rule, and they're going to be as terrible as they possibly can.
Right.
But yeah, I do love when he when Bowen says the road's still free unless Einan's taxed it, and this guy's like,
road taxes.
Oh, I should go with that. And this is where we get to see David Thewlis for the first time. Grown up Einan.
There he is.
And
in all his
oh my
glory.
God, it's like I'm just saying, like, I remember the first time I saw him, he like, no offense to David Thewlis because I love him now, but dear God, I just want to punch him, first time I saw him in this.
He is, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing up Song of Ice and Fire again, but he's literally if Joffrey was a few years older.
Yeah, you're right.
He's if Joffrey was he's Viserys Targaryen with the Mad King as his father. That's basically who he is. He's just this evil little just brat.
And, awful hair. We should just say.
His terrible hair. Yeah, his mom, after he turned evil, she was just probably like, you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the hair.
Yeah, John.
Yeah.
But again, he's, he just does so wonderfully in this role. And especially there's the later scene when he and Bowen meet again for the first time, when they have their duel. And there's something so heartbreaking for Bowen about that scene. And Einan is so absolutely horrid. And that scene, the way he's saying, I took what I needed from you. You taught me to fight. That's all. And it's like,
yeah.
Can you be any more of an ass?
And he still loses. He didn't take anything of what Bowen actually said to him. Literally took nothing of what Bowen said to heart. Ironically.
Yeah.
Because throughout his fighting style, Einan just attacks. That's all he does. He attacks with these wide swings, which allows for Bowen to easily disarm him multiple times, except for the one time he doesn't.
Yeah, and yeah, I think what's really always sort of broken my heart about that scene is especially when we cut back to earlier in the film when Einan is dying, and it's that moment when they're going to see Draco, and Bowen is reciting the the knight's oath, and it's the way that Einan repeats after him. He is dying, so you kind of get why he's doing that, but you do get the sense that like that he's kind of accepted that into his heart and that it's genuine. But as the movie carries on, you realize that no, none of it was.
Yeah.
And so my heart just breaks for Bowen because of that, because this horrible kid basically manipulated him into believing that he was getting through to him, and he wasn't. So
yeah, and then we get reintroduced to Kara in the next scene at the quarry, or her father displays force sensibilities and being able to sense her from like 10 feet away.
I have never thought about that, but you're right.
Because like she doesn't say anything to him, and he's just kind of like, Kara, and she's just right there. And I'm just like, oh, this dude's got force sensibilities. That's pretty cool. Good for him.
Yeah, or she just smells really bad. Maybe.
I mean, in her defense, everyone else would then probably also smell bad, so it should even.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, then he gets shot because Einan sucks. I'm not sure if we established that yet, that Einan sucks.
Oh, it doesn't? Yes, he sucks terribly. Yeah, and then he thinks he's the most clever guy in the world. I always said death was a release, not a punishment. It's like, right. Oh, ha ha ha!
It's
yeah, you're awful.
It's the most cheesy villain you can get.
Yeah,
but yeah, I love Kara in that. I love that Kara is like the secret protagonist the whole time, the one that almost kills the prince after the king gets murdered or killed. And then it turns out she's actually the person who Bowen has been needing to teach, and not Einan, because she's the one that could actually hold up those very, what's the word? Idealistic ideals. Yeah, the ideals, which are very like, those types of ideals are always like just hardly ever going to work most of the time, just because of how the world is. But she's the one who can get the closest with that.
Yeah, but I mean, Micah, you gotta cut him some slack. How's he supposed to know this? After all, she's the girl, he's the boy. I mean,
I know it's oh not like there's
oh my God,
there's only 2 women in this whole movie.
I mean, oh my God, that moment at the end where, like, obviously, what's the name? Brock is meant to be the most,
yeah, 90s
really awful.
90s.
But oh my God, when she gets him and he's like,
a girl,
oh, a girl got me.
He's just a math gif, just trying to figure out how this was plausible.
Oh my God, yeah, that was like, oh wow.
I was like mentally preparing myself for that for the past like week, because that's like one of the things I remember specifically from the movie was that. And like I have it later in my notes, but Kara, for whatever reason, the writers must have loved Kara's character, because every single woman protagonist or side character in the future movies that were made have her same personality. Every single one. Yeah. So,
yay.
for inclusivity, they got a woman in. Yikes.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I do kind of love it because I was looking at, because you have to keep in mind, like I'm very cognizant of the fact that this was a 90s movie, and
Yeah.
so I was looking out for how they sort of dealt with those characters. I do like the moment later in the movie when um during the battle, and Bowen decides that instead of going after Einan, he's going to go save and Kara, and you're like, oh god, are we just about to get a moment where he's got to go save the girl, but really she's like handling herself
Yeah,
just fine,
she does it
so
on her own. There's like I give it crap, but there's moments where it like deals with it better than you'd expect.
yeah.
And
there's even a moment like later on where I think it's Jason Isaac's character who attacks her, and the other villager then saves her, but then she directly after that is faced with somebody else who she handles on her own. So there were some good moments where it's not like she's depending on the men of the story. She very much was taking care of herself throughout the film, which I thought was good.
And then also they had when Bowen was trying to get the money from that one village, and then she was like, hey guys, no, he's a fraud. And then they're like, ha ha ha, look at her, ha ha. And then she's proven right 5 minutes later when Draco was like,
I love how she's smirking as like when Bowen's like, sink, and she's just there like, you're about to be found out. But yeah, and actually that like jump into that part of the movie, that actually brings up some things that I really noticed that I wouldn't have, that I definitely didn't pick up on when I was a kid, which was that Bowen is definitely having some not so great moments here, because it's one thing when we see him like taking money from and let me stop calling him Jason Isaacs all the time. Lord Felton. When he's trying to, take the money from Felton, and then the idea is that the commoners are going to get squeezed because of that. In these later sequences, he's basically directly taking money from poor villagers for the scheme. So it's not that great.
Nope, it's not that great.
But just earlier on, he is taking the task for this by Draco, who says, "How can a knight of the old code, and do this?" And to which he responds, "Why should I stick my neck out for people, too scared to risk their own?" So he's closing himself off to those concerns. He's like, I'm worrying about me. I need money to survive. So this is what we're doing. And
he fell down far.
Yeah. So he has a bit further to climb back up than maybe I realized when I was a kid. Because it doesn't paint a good picture of him. But
I like the details of like when he's first with Draco, like his shield has like those dragon teeth on it, on the outside of it. I'm pretty sure that's what those are. One of my favorite moments comes when he's first fighting Draco, and you have Gilbert being like, "Into the mountain of death he strode, into the gringy gloom, into the pit of fear unknown, perhaps to court his doom." That was good. What did I say?
What did I
say? Which is the most... I'm just like, that is me. Gilbert's just the best in this movie.
Yeah, so those times where you pity the writers of the past who didn't have like a recording device.
Yeah.
But no, he's just so great, and I love, like, it is one of the purest one of the most pure moments of joy later on in the film when they're in the other village after Tara says, this knight is no dragon slayer. And then all of a sudden you hear, "You're mistaken, my child. He's the greatest dragon slayer that ever lived, possibly the best there ever will be." And it's just like you get a grin on your face so big because he's such a great character.
He is. He just doesn't know.
Yeah.
He's just so ignorant, but he's a lovable ignorant.
And then, of course, he winds up being like a natural shot.
Right, yeah. He just rolled nat 20s. That's all he did. He just rolled nat 20s.
Yeah, Steven typed it in earlier, but when he's like, shoots the soldier in the butt, and then he goes, "Turn the other cheek, brother." I mean, seriously, you're right. He has so many amazing lines.
He has some of the best lines in the entire movie. Most of them belong to Brother Gilbert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I think that's really sort of one of the things that is nice about this movie. It's funny because I think back to, I think to my current taste in movies, and not to say that I don't, go for stuff that isn't funny, but as I've gotten older, I've noticed that I've tended to be like, no, allow this thing to be played seriously, maybe we cannot poke as much fun, but this is a movie that, like, it has moments of genuine drama where it takes itself seriously, but then it allows itself, it laughs at itself, and
that's something to be appreciated.
Yeah, it is. And so sometimes it's nice to be reminded of that, because you'll have really super emotional moments, like there's moments, especially in the beginning and then definitely towards the end, but then you'll have ridiculous moments with Draco dragging Bowen through the forest and like, "How do you like the ride so far?"
Yeah. That's one of the points I had towards, like, he has this weird, like, grappler thing tied to rocks to grab Draco, which, when thinking about it more, it doesn't really make a lot of sense how that's on the horse and how that has enough force to launch out and grab a dragon. But besides that, the horse is amazing for being able to put up with the weight of a dragon flying at full speed away, stopping for a few seconds before the saddle's what breaks. The strap breaks on it. So I'm like, that horse is got to be low-key in disguise as a horse or something super strong.
Probably the one of the best horses, like definitely most dedicated horses after as he's affectionately called, Brago the Wonder Horse from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, after Brago and probably after Maximus from Tangled.
But okay, Cassie, bye. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping, Cassie.
Yep.
That's also plausible.
Very much so.
I would believe that. Still, though, the horse had to be strong for that, and the horse later gets traumatized. It's just picked up off the ground and it just flies off. But yeah, then he gets to meet Draco and chat with him.
Yeah, and this is, of course, where we get, the, iconic, a moment of, "I am the last one." It's always in all the trailers. Sorry, everybody, for my sad attempt at a Sean Connery voice right there.
Rest in peace, Sean Connery.
Yeah, I've actually been kind of on a Sean Connery kick lately because I was just watching The Hunt for Red October the other day, and then watching this as well. Man, the man had one of the greatest voices in cinema history, and just such a phenomenal actor. And and as I mentioned earlier, the CGI is definitely sketchy, by put up against today's stuff. But what carries it through is his performance, so that you're still emotionally connected to that character, even though you don't believe the animation really for a second these days. But back in the day, it was actually impressive. And I always say, like, you have to you have to go ahead and push the boundaries of what's possible at the time. So even though the visual effects might not stand up today, but you wouldn't have the stuff today without stuff like this. So
yeah, there's some shots where I liked the CGI a lot. There are others where looks sketchy. The rock thing, the rock thing is always gonna look weird. But
I was like, wait, how's he doing that?
That's always weird. But I believe there's some legends where dragons can camouflage, or dragon-like creatures can camouflage. But yeah, it's definitely sketchy in some places. But there's bits where, like, whenever he's flying and there's just kind of like gold glittering on his scales, I really liked those. Which makes me he mentions that the scarred one is the one that Bowen beat in the beginning. That's the other one he fought when Brother Gilbert got introduced. Was called like the scarred one. So that makes me wonder if the other dragons had like names like that, what would be Draco's? My current theory would be like the gilded one because of his golden scales.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was the one that gave his heart away.
Yeah, well, I do like the moment where he's going in the water and it comes up, and you can see the water causing like a kind of a glistening effect on his skin. And then of course he sees the sheep and he's like, hello.
That's always a joke my dad did. Whenever me or someone else would reference Dragonheart, he'd go, lunch.
Yes, Petter. You could never tell you can never like tell it was Sean Connery from performance to performance. He really was the master of accents, wouldn't you say, Micah?
Oh, of course. I may not watch a lot of movies, but I know.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. Like, Sean Connery just had, that presence and one of those voices that you were like, I don't care. You know what?
Yeah.
He should be allowed to sound like Sean Connery no matter what he's playing.
Yeah.
But
then
we've kind of been jumping all over, so I'm not sure where
we just passed. I think we just passed where he met Draco.
Okay, yeah.
And they were talking, and then he pulls out the rotting arm from his molars, and he's like, Sir Eglamour, which I don't know if his name was Eglamour, he probably deserved it.
But yeah, I mean, this again is talking about like how goofy this movie, allows itself to be with, they're having a fight, and then all of a sudden, he sticks the sword up into his mouth. He's like, oh.
It makes me think of another dragon movie, which I think that you should watch at some point. Not necessarily to stream, but it would be like a fun, like, it's a very campy, cheesy movie called George and the Dragon. So it's, of course, a mix of knights and damsels and dragons crossed with George in the Jungle. Because why not?
Yeah, why not?
The cross with George in the Jungle is actually just for one scene and the name.
I will say that, though, that brings back a memory that's off topic where it was when I was younger and I had gone to the movies with my mom, and for some reason we decided on going to see George in the Jungle movie with Brendan Fraser. And I think we got about 5 minutes into the movie and we were both like, nope, and walked out.
Nope.
Apologies to anybody who likes that movie, but
the George and the Dragon movie is very fun though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, but yeah, and then he pulls out Sir Eglamour's arm, and then they chat. And then you could just tell that for the entire time, while the tongue is moving in Draco's mouth, he's actually just loosening the sword and like loosening his footing so as he could just push him out later easily.
When I was watching this, I really had to think about like what was Sean Connery doing, while he was recording this to recreate.
Oh God, such way.
I would have loved to see behind the scenes footage of the recording of that.
They're just like, your mouth is just hanging open this entire time because you got to do it in there.
But yeah, no, God, and just the exchanges between Dennis Quaid and Sean Connery, just, when he's like, we can continue this to its final stupidity, or you can listen to my alternative. And then the way Dennis Quaid is just like, what's the alternative?
I can last for 3 days. I can last 3 weeks.
But yeah, and then of course that's when they start the whole thing where, which is the whole thing where they're going to make the ruse of, he's the only dragon left, but they're going to keep pretending like, Bowen's killing it, a new dragon each time. But I always thought, like, how much would Draco actually get from this? Because wouldn't he still be at danger of other, dragon slayers seeing him?
Yeah.
So I'm like, is he doing this more for his own amusement?
I don't think it would have lasted long because this kingdom seems very tiny. It's a very small little kingdom, and Bowen would have had to go to like other places.
Yeah, which though I do wonder, do we think that Bowen has been off in other kingdoms and stuff, or is it because
I think so. I think it somewhat implies it like accidentally because Felton, Jason Isaacs' character, calls him like a foreigner.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, even though I'm pretty sure Felton would be. But Bowen would. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Bowen has, just from the implications.
Yeah, so I guess the idea is that they would have gone off, because certainly there is no way that Bowen has been kicking around the same small kingdom for 12 years.
Yeah. I think he just left and then he came back.
Yeah.
And then Einan is like, oh, you're alive. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and they get the deal, and then Bowen starts to, put villagers in bad places because Draco's causing a mess.
But yeah, so after they do the first con, we'll say that's when they have the discussion about the fact that Bowen says he's a knight of the old code, and Draco asks him if he feels conflicted about that, and and that's when they have
Are you though?
And so they're having the discussion about the commoners being squeezed by the nobility. And I do like what Bowen says to them. He says, "Don't clutter up a clever scheme with morality."
How dare you apply morals to things? I gave those up long ago.
But I've always, I've always loved that moment where, they're riding off, going off into the field together, and again the music comes in and sort of they've got a theme in there that kind of establishes their friendship, and we'll just take another drink every time I bring up the music, because honestly, like I do think that this is one of the most effective film scores, just because it does so much for the movie in terms of the relationships between the various characters and making you feel that emotion. But yeah, so let's pause there actually for a second.
I was about to say, is it your mid-roll time?
yeah, we're an hour in, so we'll go ahead and talk about stuff that's coming up. I don't have the next stream planned, in case you all haven't noticed. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants these days, and pretty much waiting for the weeks that I am off from Here Be Dragons, which, by the way, go check out tomorrow's stream over there, because even though I will not be on it, Stephen will be doing an episode of I Know That Nerd with Dancing Sean, actually. So make sure you check that out. That'll be a lot of fun. And I think next week we're going to be doing a retro review on The Fifth Element, which we just decided on, or, well, to put it more accurately, Stephen and Nessie decided on, and I know when I'm outnumbered.
It's
but
I against one.
But I did enjoy the movie when I saw it, so it's not going to be that tough of a thing. But yeah, and then like I said, I'm not exactly sure what's up next for me, but I know I did talk the other day with Yodi about doing a stream on the 2011 version of True Grit, which we discovered that we both like, and I love that movie. So that might be something that we do, so that I can finally have him on, so he can stop making me feel guilty for not having. No, that'll be a lot of fun, because I love that movie so much. Okay, so that's basically what's coming up. Mike, for the people who don't know you from our Slack group and all that, tell them what you do, and do you have anything coming up?
I'm technically on a podcast, but we're on a hiatus right now, and I'm sure we'll come back sometime in the future, because it's a Song of Ice and Fire related podcast. So we would like to talk about the House of the Dragon stuff that's coming up, but that's a little bit under the radar right now, and we don't entirely know what we're doing right now. So oh yes, what Danny says in the chat, I'm also very annoying on Twitter right now in terms of the Song of Madness tournament that's going on, where Song of Ice and Fire podcast Davos Fingers is running a March Madness style tournament between various characters, and I may or may not have gotten the internet to vote on my side and get my favorite minor character to pass round one.
Like, I was resolved to stay out of all of this, because, to be completely honest, y'all drive me crazy with this stuff each year. And I'm like, nope, get away from me. But then, you were so passionate about it, Micah, and I was like, well, then I've got to go ahead and vote for Satin, because if I don't, it's going to be very uncomfortable today.
Yeah, it was last, Monday? Or, no, it was Wednesday, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Where he won. Basically, I was just very intent on getting him to win that round against a mystery person who half of the voters were sure as to who it was. And I was just like, I can't let this stand. I can't let him lose to this character. So, yeah, that was fun.
And then, of course, you unleashed, like, once I gave in to you, now I'm like voting on all of them. So Congrats. It's like, God, you're welcome. Damn it. Wait, Beth is yelling at me, so I'm gonna say yes. I have been watching Outlander this season, and I think the premiere was last week, and I think tonight the new episode is dropping. So yeah, definitely watching, Beth, which is great, because for some reason last season I put off watching forever, because I think it was the first year I wasn't watching like live on Stars. I was watching it through like on demand through Amazon. So So it was very easy for me to procrastinate, but not so this season. Anyway, so uh, that's my Outlander sidetrack. But yeah, I wanted to take this time, Micah, to ask you because you and I have not really had the chance to like sit down and talk one on one for an extended period of time. We chat during the Zooms and stuff, but this has really been the first opportunity we've had to do something like this. So aside from Dragonheart, and I know Prince of Egypt,
That's
what are
very high
some
on the list.
what are some of your other favorite movies?
Like I have not watched a lot of movies, which I somewhat regret. But I would love to do something like the second Kung Fu Panda movie, which would be kind of awkward to do on a stream for like people who like haven't seen like the first one. But I love the Kung Fu Panda movies. One is very good, and two is masterpiece level. Maybe I haven't watched it in a while, but I love that one so much. Those would be high on my lists. What else? Like I've literally seen so few movies, and now I'm just like, what else do I watch? If you want to talk about like a bad movie, I'm sure that the 2018 Robin Hood shitstorm is available on the stream somewhere.
No, see, I have this thing about bad movies. They should be like they can be bad, but they should still be like enjoyably bad.
You can laugh at them, certainly. We can like point out things that are just silly.
I remember back when Amy was still doing this with me every week, we did have the notion of doing an April Fool's stream, which was going to be the 90s version of Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is like a historically bad movie, but one that I nonetheless got a great deal of enjoyment out of when I was younger. And so the whole thing was going to be that for April Fools, we were going to review it, and I was going to go the entire stream just pretending like I was like talking about it like it was an A+ movie and deserving of awards and everything. We never got around to that, but so I'm open to bad movies so long as they're, there's some fun to be had.
I just thought of one, the DreamWorks' Sinbad never gets talked about. And I think that is a very interesting, it's a short-ish, it's not like under an hour, but it's like between an hour and 90 minutes, if I recall. But it's such an interesting movie where you can see it's like this little adventure flick, and like the animation is like pretty good for the most part, but you can tell on some places where they didn't care as much until you get to like the goddess that's in it, and then they put everything into her. It's great. That could be something for the future. I'll get you into all the DreamWorks movies.
Yeah, but no, I will be. I really don't have any excuse not to watch Prince of Egypt because I did buy the digital version, so I've got it in my iTunes library. So it's just a matter of pressing play. Which might just make you angrier at me, knowing that I haven't and I haven't watched it yet. But
all that I know now is that you have it, and I'm gonna hold on to that information.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess we can dive back into the movie. So let's see. Trying to think where we left off.
At let's see. I'm following my notes here because I wrote them down like chronologically as I went through.
I knew I could depend on you, Pat.
Bowen causes damages. Well, Kara tries to assassinate Einen, and then she gets captured for a minute. But because he sees her in a mirror, and then she just tries to stab him, and he's just like, "Hey, I remember you. This isn't the first time you try to kill me."
Yeah, and so in case we decided that he isn't awful enough, he apparently is trying to seduce her.
Yeah. Judging by the fact that he gets stabbed, it doesn't look like he actually got to. So, yay, the movie didn't go that far. Would have been negative points if it did, because they didn't need to. But, yeah. Probably didn't go far, and good on Queen Aislinn for once again being the best, and she got Kara out. So.
Yeah, which made me happy because I saw that and I forgot that she actually did get her out, which, like, points for her, but also no points for Einen's security detail because they're not doing their job.
I love it. Like, towards the end of the movie, there's like no one left in the castle because Einen had like 30 knights. He had like 30 guys, and they all died in the forest.
Oh my god! Yeah, I really do love how small scale this movie is. It's great.
It adds an entirely different angle to watching the movie when you realize just how few people are in that kingdom.
Yeah. And okay, and so this kind of leads us to another part of the movie, which is really not great, which is when she goes back to her village to try and talk them into raising a force, and they decide to sacrifice her to Draco, which is funny because, hey, she's a girl, right?
Yeah. And she's a redhead, which means, kissed by fire or something. But
hey, we're gonna have comrade bonding moments later and forget about the fact that you tried to feed me to a dragon.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. And by the way, Hugh, who's like the village leader guy, apparently the actor who plays him, his name, at least on IMDb and on like credits lists, is Wolf Christian, which is kind of a cool name. That kind of took me by surprise because I was watching this and saw the credits and saw that, and I was like, interesting. That's quite interesting in there, buddy. But yeah.
But I do love what leads up to that, where Bowen is trying to get them to cough up money, which again, not a great look for him. But where he's like, dragons are partial to, maiden sacrifices, I hear. And then they end up doing it, and then he goes to Draco and he's like, they're trying to, get you to go away with this.
Trying to placate you with a sacrifice.
Placate with the sacrifice. And he's like, and who gave them that bright idea?
Who told them that? He's like, I don't eat people, they're sentient. I love it where Bowen is like, you should not waste food here. And then she just like smashes his face with a watermelon.
Oh god. But yeah, and then so apparently, he's still waiting in the village, but Draco decides he's going to strike up a conversation with Kara, and he's auditioning his singing voice for her, which is just like,
I love it.
It's great. And then, like, so many times this movie just turns into a buddy film because he comes back and Draco's like, I've been distracted. And he's like, I just like, it's so silly, but so much fun.
Yeah. And then he fights Einen because they had their reunion in Duel, which is like the, is it the 3? I think it's a 3-point, or I keep forgetting the name to the writing rule, but basically it's a 3-point structure where you have their initial fight in the very beginning, where they're sparring. Then you have their second fight where Bowen loses, and then you have the third fight at the very end, which was nice. Kudos. If it ain't broke, don't fix it trope, and it's great.
I did wonder watching this, like, and these are like the questions that, again, when you're young, you don't ask. But I was like, wait, how did they find? Why are they there?
It's tiny kingdom. It's the same waterfall as when they first met. It's so small. And seriously, when you think about it, when you realize how small this kingdom is, it really just adds this whole thing to the film.
It's like, oh, Einan, you were just out for a ride. That's bad luck for us.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And then Draco saves him. And then I love this little bit that Dennis Quaid does in delivering the line of, I had everything under control, where his voice cracks.
Yeah.
Like, I had everything under control.
Yeah, and again, and then what comes next is, again, what I love about Kara is the fact that, you know, she tries to convince him sort of, you know, heart to heart of what he should do, and really this is a sort of, again, a commentary on, you know, the, you know, sexism of the time, where she's like, you know, someone like you could, you know, rally people and give them courage. It's like, yeah, because you're a guy, they'll listen to you, whereas they're not listening to me. So she tries that tactic, and I do like that moment between them where she's like, what are you looking at? And he says, myself, once upon a time. And but then, because that tact doesn't work, then she decides to force it on him by trying to expose him to like the next village.
She's a combination of being a mentor to his old ways, and then she's also his new student in said ways at the same time, which is interesting. I always like that angle where she becomes like the new protagonist that's going to lead the people, although she doesn't actually get to. Yeah,
well, I don't know. We don't see past the ending. Maybe
who knows? Maybe they conquered their sexism. I don't know. There's only like 150 of them.
But yeah, so, and then we got the whole weird episode with the cannibals.
Like, that was strange. That was I'm like, wait, they're cannibals. Why though?
Maybe so we don't feel that bad about them being ripped off.
That was kind of weird.
Because like there's no indication of that. It's just all of a sudden, like, once they lose the dragon, it's like, all right, meat. It's like, weird. So it's that kind of, you know, village. Right. But yeah, which I think, you know, what it accomplishes is it's to get them to run away, so they take off on Draco, and
they go
basically it's to get them to Avalon, which,
right,
again, talking about the music, as you know, Draco says, this is Avalon, the resting place of King Arthur, and you've got, you know,
because by the way, it's actually a King Arthur film, sort of tangentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so then that leads us into the sequence where Draco, you know, comes clean about the fact that, you know, he is the dragon that, you know, that saved Einan, and giving that speech talking about, you know, what he hoped would be his, you know, way, you know, to save his soul, you know, to go amongst the stars with the other dragons, ended up being a curse, and it was his sin. And
yeah, I don't know. It is really sad for him it's just kind of sad to live that way because there was always like the I've always been iffy on that part because of how like my family was of course involved in this religious like almost cult because we had to live in the fear of God, fear His name, blah 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 blah. So that always just came off as kind of strange to me whenever I watch that part. Because I'm always just like, Draco, you're probably going to be fine. It's okay, buddy. But
yeah,
it is sad in the movie, though.
Yeah, I think it's just this idea that because he tried to do something right, that ended up backfiring on him, and
which
caused
he does
more
with
problem.
Bowen too.
Yeah, so he feels responsible for that, and
right,
and so this is his way of trying to set things right.
Yeah, and that's what like Bowen goes down has a similar like starting point where he thought he was doing something right, and then it backfired for both of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And another like one of those sort of spine tingling moments of the film where Bowen hears presumably the voice of I guess it's supposed to be King Arthur.
I just thought it was Draco just like manipulating.
Oh.
I thought Draco was gonna be like, this will get him to do what I want him to
do. Yeah, he does peek from behind the corner, afterwards. So maybe he was just putting on a voice.
It's like... It was Sean Connery's voice too. So that's just what I've always thought.
But reciting the oath, and then and Dennis Quaid then recites it back. It's this movie has so many moments that have always been very kind of given me the chills in how sort of effective and
its serious moments get its serious moments.
Yeah. And so I've always really liked that, and plus, like, we talked earlier about how we've gotten accustomed to knights who are less than knightly, in other stories, and especially in A Song of Ice and Fire. But I still can't help it. I love those moments where these types of characters do live up to what and so the reciting of a vow such as this, and then the resolve that he is going to go off and do the right thing and help people,
which does happen in the Song of Ice and Fire books with characters with like Brienne who are like, I am going to uphold these oaths even though everything else sucks. Which is greatly appreciated because there is two sides to the coin. There's like the knighthood usually is a load of crap, and usually they're not great. But sometimes you do get the people who are like, no, I'm drawing the line here, and I'm gonna do my best, and that's pretty great.
Potter, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong. They are always male, even in like the prequels and such. All of the dragons they get Patrick Stewart for one, and then they get Ben Kingsley for another.
We did get like a female dragon is alluded to in this movie, but
the scarred one, she died without saying a single thing.
Yeah, not good. I'm just going to make up my headcanon that she was voiced by Kira, even though the timing of when the movie was made wouldn't really match up there. But but that's okay. Yeah, and in the TV series Merlin, John Hurt,
Oh right, yeah. That was awesome. That was great when he got to like Do I spoil Merlin here?
Well, I actually have not seen the final season of that show because for
Okay, I
some reason
wasn't gonna
I
spoil the final season, just like a couple
okay.
seasons in, where he like gets let out and then he gets to be mad.
But yeah,
It's like that.
it's side note, I've been really pissed off at myself that like I watched the first 4 seasons of that and got sidetracked off of watching the final season. I have got to fix that.
Oh, my aunt never finished Merlin because she didn't want it to end.
I do remember that like the first episode of season 5 has Liam Cunningham.
Oh, right, it does. He appears in that, and I believe Ian Glenn appears in a later season as well, I think.
Okay.
Or that might have been Doctor Who, where he appears.
Same
I
thing.
don't remember which. Same thing, yeah.
So yeah, so this is when, you know, the rebellion starts up again.
The rebellion starts. Everyone's suddenly well equipped.
Yeah.
It's like
well, when you bring
the arrows.
when you bring the dragon, like weapons just materialize.
They got a boost in the economy with the dragon. Yeah, they were like, "Oh, we got a dragon. We can do this." But I do like little details, like with the spears aren't actually like straight; they're literally sticks.
Yeah,
they literally have a bunch of sticks, which is cool.
And again, like I love the stuff with Brother Gilbert. Like you've never fired a bow and an arrow in your life, and they
in the head and down there.
Brother Gilbert, you're a natural.
Gilbert's the best character.
Yeah. Which, and I love the fact that in any normal like movie without like the magic element, he would have taken down the villain because he, you know, fires an arrow right into Einan's heart. It's like, damn it, Brother Gilbert should be the hero of the story. But
he's like, "Thou shalt not kill," and then God heard him. It's so funny to me that the priest is the one who's he's just naturally got good eyesight and judgment of a moving target. It's just so funny.
But yeah, no, and again, like I was talking again about the scale of this movie, it really became kind of funny to me once the battle in the woods started, and I'm like, this all of a sudden, now that I know more about filmmaking as I've gotten older, this looks very much like a very low budget fight scene where they just found a wooded area and a bunch of extras and costume.
There's this one shot, I believe, where this like knight falls from his horse and he just like screams, but it's like framed weird, and like you hear him get stabbed out of screen.
But again, I like that about it because and you know, it's nice to see something that's a bit more what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's my brain's not working right today, but just the fact that it is lower budget and it's smaller in scale, it does kind of add a charm to it, especially, you know, and the other thing about just the appearance of the film overall, what's interesting to me is I used to think that, like, you know, when I was younger, movies just, you know, naturally looked, you know, had that new shiny look to them because they were newer productions. And so I remember there were a few years there where I'm like, you know, film kind of reached its, you know, film evolved to a point where now stuff from the past, you know, 20 and 25 years is all going to look relatively new. But then as I've gotten older, I've realized, and no, I'm sure everybody thinks that about the stuff they grow up with, because this movie does now look like an older fantasy film, that.
Yeah.
But I like that, despite the fact that it's a sign of me getting older. It also is just, it's fun to look back at the stuff that I grew up with, and now it's got almost a classic feel to it,
Yeah.
versus some newer stuff.
It's only a very fun, like, smaller movie that came out. I like to watch every now and again.
But yeah,
yeah,
so I don't know if there's that much to say about like the battle stuff, because it's fairly standard and it's smaller scale. But
it's just lure them into the forest, surround them with a ring of fire. The horses can't do anything. Pull them off said horses, and then just stab them. That's all I gotta do.
But again, like the stuff with Brother Gilbert is the highlight, because he's keeps raising the bow and arrow, and it's like, no, oh no. See, he doesn't want to do anything. But then
there's the main villain. I'll get him. Oh, it didn't even work.
Yeah, he finds creative ways of taking out.
They set up this whole log trap. They have the Ewok log trap.
But yeah, then of course when it comes to the main villain, I guess he knows he has to act, and it's this big dramatic build up, and doesn't do anything. It hurts Draco, but
yeah, which gets him captured.
Which, by the way, is now the time that you want to mention the Dragon Slayers.
The Dragon Slayers are bad. They pull in these Dragon Slayers at the last minute because Iceland wants to kill Einan, because Iceland is smart and knows what she's doing, and it's also awesome. But the Dragon Slayers are just brought in as these foreign, quote, barbarians, end quote, and it's not good. Negative points on that, and they die anyway, so yeah.
Yeah. I even admitted, like, that's something that, as a 12-year-old watching this movie, I didn't think twice
you're just
about.
Not gonna...
But yeah.
The sequel movie is even worse, because it has a couple characters from China show up, and yikes, the stereotypes, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I get why they don't have any dimension to them, because they are just meant to be stand-in baddies that come in at the last minute. But yeah, they could have given more thought to
they could have had like Dragon Slayers show up in the middle, because they'd be like, oh, there's suddenly dragon popularity happening in abundance for whatever reason. Definitely not because there's a con game going on. But they could have just not had them in there and had Iceland do something else. But it's nice as a writing trick to bring in more Dragon Slayers, because you've established that there's more Dragon Slayers around. But it wasn't good.
Yeah, or just not have them be like barbarians.
Not have them be barbarians. Just do research. Just have different characters from different places, and just not have them be bad and offensive.
Which apparently they're really good at dragon slaying, but not very good at protecting themselves, because
none of them are. None of the knights aren't either. It's such a small, tiny little thing that has like no training. They had one knight.
Because Aisling takes out one of the Dragon Slayers standing guard like really easily.
Yeah, although she is just kind of awesome. I'm not worried about that at all.
Absolutely.
Which unfortunately leads to her demise, because Einan catches her and then he kills her. RIP.
Yeah, like that's the thing. These you imagine the backstory for these guys is that they've been really desperate for work because
Yeah, that's possible, but I think that I think it's possible that Draco was just lying the whole time. I think he was just pulling Bowen's leg and being like, "Yeah, I am totally the last one." He's just kind of, he's just crossing his fingers behind him.
it's like imagine if the story had ended a different way and he didn't have to die, and it's like 2 weeks later and a dragon flies overhead, and Bowen's like, "What?
Two
What
weeks
the
later,
hell?"
he goes to the coast. He goes to the coast of Brittany, France, where they have their weekly hangout.
Oh
Like
god.
he's also the he's also in England, so like how many other dragons are you gonna see across like the entire expanse of the world? So, I don't think he was actually the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but no, she has such a great moment here where she's like, I wanted to correct a mistake I made years ago when I saved a creature not worth saving. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But she just gives you a lot for her character. I really liked Aislinn because she's just tried a lot when she could, and then sadly she couldn't do all that much because I guess there was just no people around. But yeah, so she tries this, and sadly she dies for it.
Yeah, she doesn't really. The population is so small. She doesn't really have other like people in the nobility who are allies
Right.
to her. She's
Apparently
pretty much
there's only 2 other lords, so what can you
yeah.
do?
Another moment of hers that I liked, and this is backtracking all the way to the beginning, is when Brock comes in and says, you know, your husband, the king, is slain, and she has like a non-response to it, and he looks confused for a second. It's like, come on, dude, you gotta know that this is not a warm relationship.
She's like, "Oh no. Tell me, did he get killed by the villagers he was attacking?"
That's right, Patter.
Yeah. And most of their brain cells too. But yeah.
But
Like
yeah,
if there were any characters that I would want like an expanded like lore on for the writer, because apparently he just wants to like go do more with this world. If there's anything I want him to expand on, it's her. Just her.
yeah, I think that it would be a really interesting story, and
Yeah.
it would be something nice to see. I don't see them writing expanded universe Dragonheart novels, but but if they ever did, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see backstories on her, and honestly, I would like to see a backstory on Bowen as well, because I'd like to kind of
Right.
see how he was brought up, and
I think that like a big theme of this movie is that there's a lot of like these are the last ones. Like Bowen is the last one of the old code. Aislinn, I'm guessing, is either very far out of it, or she's like the last of an old order of dragon worshipping people. And Draco says he's the last dragon, but I say X'd it out on that. So there's a big theme in there, which is pretty interesting to look at.
Yeah, but
Expanded universe, they added 2 hamlets in a small town.
yeah, maybe we just need to get busy on some fan fiction.
Maybe there's stuff in here. It gave me an idea for something that's not quite in the same way, but has to do with different constellations and creatures. But that's something else that my brain is in development of.
So we get inside the castle, and there's a bunch of like smaller fights going on, and and we get some more of Bowen fighting Einan, and Bowen becomes an action hero with his flipping down into
Flip.
like I was like, he's pretty much like a Marvel action hero.
Yeah.
You know,
And then you have Einan doing like the feint, where Einan does the most clever thing where he's just like pretending to be dead at the bottom of the stairs, and he's just like, oop, trip.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and then we talked about earlier. There's some stuff with Kara, and she gets to hold her own, and where she takes out Brock, which is again, gotta mention his disbelief at being killed, by a girl is like,
Oh no, oh no, poor you, Brock.
yeah.
I mean, although he's probably only seen like 10 women, so yeah. Oh well.
It's all leading up to the big ending scene, which I mentioned earlier today, still reduces me to tears watching it, even all these years later, where Draco tells Bowen that in order for Einan to die,
Draco
Bowen
has
is,
to die.
yeah, and yeah, and it's just Bowen tries to talk his way out of it in every possible way. He's like, well, alive or dead, he's beaten, we've won. And it's like, nope, you gotta finish the deed.
Yeah.
And it's just so beautifully done, just as Einan comes running in, and everything slows down, and you just hear the heartbeat of Draco, and there's such weight to that moment where where Bowen finally takes the axe and swings it at Draco. It's just so powerful and weighty
Yeah.
and sad, really
It
sad.
is sad, and the music is sad, and we are sad.
Yeah.
And then Draco becomes Stardust.
Yeah, and again, you said the music is sad. This piece is called "To the Stars," and it's basically one of the most used pieces of trailer music ever, because in the '90s, especially, it was '90s and early 2000s. It was pretty much showing up in, I'd say, like at least half of the movie trailers put out. I remember even random stuff, like there was a Robin Williams movie called Patch Adams that used the music, and it's like, and I think they used it in the movie for the trailers for Mulan as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's just beautiful, um, and just the dialogue where Bowen says, without you, Draco, what do we do? Where do we turn? And then you just hear Sean Connery's voice go, "To the stars, Bowen, to the stars." And it's just, it takes its time as we see Bowen's spirit,
Draco's spirit.
yeah, Draco's spirit disintegrating and going up into the heavens, and then we just get these sort of slow shots of on each of the characters' faces, and then the music just erupts into that beautiful, gorgeous theme, and every single time I've ever watched this movie, just chills down my spine and some misty eyes right here. So
Yeah.
got to be one of my favorite film endings of all time.
It's a really good ending. And then they all lived like somewhat happily ever after.
I love that the ending, it comes in with Brother Gilbert narrating. It's like, of course, this has been Brother Gilbert telling the story the whole time. Like, but yeah, adds the grades, like, but then you wonder, like, how much of this is true if he's
what was exaggerated?
If he's known for exaggerating his histories.
What was true?
Which you have to figure, like
Cannibals, probably.
I'm guessing all the stuff with him being a perfect shot might have been stretching the truth a little bit.
Might have been a little bit. I would say the cannibals, probably.
But yeah, no, I just love this movie, and I'm glad that there was some stuff that obviously,
yeah,
maybe not as, doesn't stand up as well today,
yeah, some
as it
didn't
did when
age
I was
well,
younger.
and some is just bad.
But overall, like, I enjoyed the heck out of watching this again, and it still made me very emotional. So
yeah.
I'm glad to say it's still a favorite after all these years.
Oh, totally. I always enjoyed this one when I watch it. Not so much the other ones, but this one. And I just like finding like new things each time. Like with this time, I was just like, wait, this kingdom's just tiny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I feel like King is like more of a self-given title.
Yeah.
Here,
like it's in 984 AD. If it's anywhere in England, it's probably either just really small, or it's actually part of the English kingdom, and the King of England just does not care. It would be with Saxons though, because it's before William the Conqueror. So yeah,
I like it though, because it just made Einon kind of even more pathetic than
oh yeah,
than ever. But
and the king beforehand, King Frayne,
yeah,
he was just, I guess he just liked to just punch people. I guess that king was just the worst, and he had like 2 lines. I think he had like "get over here" and then something else.
Oh, which, by the way, like, the moment that Einon is like, he says a couple things beforehand where you're like, eh. But when you really know he's a little shit is when he takes the crown from his father.
Yeah.
His father wakes up and he's like, "Die, it's mine."
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
Oh, hey, we got Obi in the chat. Hey, Obi.
Hi, Obi. Yeah, so we are just about at the end here.
Yeah.
Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
There's like a couple of like clunky bits of like dialogue here and there, which makes sense. Like when Einon's like, the peasants are revolting, it's just like all of a sudden whenever Brock just shows up, it's like you just say that to Brock normally. Whenever he enters.
Like, Brock's the one showing up to share the news. Why do you know that they're
we gotta go away from the training scene. We gotta go to the peasants revolting.
But I kind of like that this movie has its share of, like, there's well-written dialogue, but there's also kind of sort of almost clunky, sort of doofy lines. Because it kind of roots it in, the older style of fantasy movies that before, like, because it's hard to remember now, but Lord of the Rings really was kind of, the first, sort of fantasy film where, it took itself, and not to say that Lord of the Rings doesn't have its share of very funny moments, because it does, but it took itself seriously. And it wasn't, it didn't have to constantly sort of wink at the audience.
Yeah, it kept itself grounded while also taking itself seriously and knowing when to keep itself lighthearted.
Yeah. So this is very much in that tradition of the older fantasy films that, and I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's, it's just a different style. And, that sort of style of fantasy movie like Willow and, all those older type of films that were, fun and adventurous, but goofy at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's kind of nice to see, like, even though, as we said, the effects are often dated in this film, I like the fact that the film stands up regardless, and that it remains a fun experience and at times an emotional movie. Because it just, to be completely honest, it's nice to know that something I loved as a kid still, resonates with me. Because very often you go back to,
Yeah.
movies like that and you're like, oh God, no.
Right. Yeah.
I should have
Like
left that in the past.
there's quite a few of those. Like I like to watch like certain like Don Bluth movies, and there's like that one about the rooster who just goes missing. Then there's this kid who gets transported to that world. That one I'm just like, I'm not watching it as an adult because I know it's bad. I'm just like, that can stay with 6-year-old Micah who liked it.
Yeah, there's far too many movies that I really pity my parents at having to sit
Right.
through with me. Sorry, Mom and Dad. But yeah, I don't know. We pretty much covered the entire film going through it all. But was there anything you wanted to mention before we start to wrap up?
I think we talked about most of it. I think I went through most of my notes.
Oh, but I didn't. Yeah. I will say I didn't show off my physical media at any point. This is.
Mine's not in my room, but it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, this is the original DVD from 1998.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Which, funny enough, I have never bought it on another format because the Blu-ray is not really that great of a Blu-ray. So I decided
I'm not surprised
to not go there. But I am hoping that they remaster it at some point, maybe for 4K, which would be nice.
That'd be nice. They actually had like the cover for the movie was actually like the trailer shot thing that they had when Bowen comes back at the end.
Yeah.
With Draco before they go fight.
Yeah, that was back when they actually used movie posters on home video releases.
Right.
Before they figured out how to use Photoshop, apparently, and do really bad jobs, with their cover designs.
Instead have everyone's faces on here.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, so I guess that pretty much wraps it up. Just once again, everybody, please tune in to Here Be Dragons tomorrow, because Stephen will be doing an episode of I Know That Nerd with Dance and Sean, and then next week we're going to be talking about over on Here Be Dragons, we'll be talking about The Fifth Element, which I just saw for the first time. I think it was last year when we did a watch party in the Slack. So I'm actually looking forward to revisiting that, because when we did that, I bought it on 4K. Because I thought, hey, might as well experience it, and the way it should be. And so I'll go ahead and watch that again in preparation. And and then what else is coming? Yeah, I don't have anything scheduled yet for this channel, but I'll let you guys know on Twitter what's coming up. And Micah, you guys aren't doing anything on your podcast right now, but if you want to go ahead and plug your stuff regardless.
So we run a podcast called Planetos Podcast. If you're into Song Ice and Fire stuff, such as like the houses and various secondary and minor characters, check out Planetos on like Podbean, SoundCloud, iTunes, and all those fun little things. We're even on YouTube. And my general Twitter is just at Micah_of_Clark. If you want to follow me there and see me be annoying about Song Ice and Fire posts. And I'm currently reading through the Wheel of Time books right now, so I'm also being annoying with those posts. those are a journey. So yeah.
Which I am actually really looking forward to listening to the audiobook for the first book, because I got the newer one that's read by Rosamund Pike. So I'm looking
Very
forward to
nice.
that, because she was my favorite part of the
Makes sense.
of the first season of the series. So and she even reads it as her character, like in the same voice and everything. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that should be a lot of fun to listen to, and then I'll know a bit more about what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, aside from that, I think we covered everything. Just, once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it when you guys, watch these streams, especially, this is not a super recent movie, obviously. It's about, let's see, it's 1996. So it's just a little over 25 years old now. This could have been a retro review. But yeah, thank you so much, and Micah, thank you for making the time to come on.
Of course.
We've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm glad we made it work. And I will get on to watching Prince of Egypt so that we can start trying to plan.
Yes.
To
I will need to know your reactions when you do get to that, because there's some stuff in there where I'm like, John would love this in that movie.
Well, I know. For the music alone, I've been told by you and by other people that I need to watch it. Okay, I guess that's it. Once again, thank you everybody for showing up, and tune in to Here Be Dragons tomorrow. Yeah, and I will see you guys. Well, I'll see many of you in the Slack right after this. But for everybody else, I'll see you on Here Be Dragons next week. So have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.